Hello, welcome to episode 40 of the Epic Film Challenge, 2001 movies you must see before you die. 1928's The Crowd, directed by King Vidor, who I thought, based on the outlandish name, was a foreign director, but in fact he is American and has a very cool name, I think, and I know that another one of his films appears in the book 1001 movies you must see before you die, so this won't be the last time we're covering a King Vidor film. Nonetheless, I'm filming this in my old room, which will be the first time and certainly not the last, but this is where the Epic Film Challenge, the original, was born, and well, the entirety of it pretty much, and was completed right here in this very room. So it's all coming back half circle, kind of. Anyway, The Crowd, 1928. I'd always seen things about this film when looking through film history, particularly the silent era, which I'm a big fan of, and The Crowd is kind of a 1920s version of a slice of life film, I feel like. It's about a guy called Johnny Sims, who initially that blew my mind because when I was a kid, for about 10 years, I was trying to write this fantasy novel, and one of the characters was called Johnny Sims. And it wasn't like I named it after anything, and I just was like, what? His name's Johnny Sims? But it goes back to the film Wings, which won the Oscar for the first Oscar for Best Picture. One of the characters in that film has the exact same name as my mother. So it's always kind of like interesting when you see a name in a film that old in a period that is so far behind your lifetime. But you have, the things that crop up that are the same, whether it be a name or even a phrase. And you're like, oh, it's kind of just like now almost. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. I digress. But Johnny Sims is a regular guy who we kind of see like his beginnings. We see his father, him getting born, him as a kid, and how his dad really wants his son Johnny to be someone, to make something of himself. And it's something I think a lot of people can relate to, is a parent who maybe feels like they haven't really given life their best shot and really wants their child to succeed. It's a very universal story. And his father passes away, and so he's left in his early 20s to go out to the big city, New York, and make a name for himself and be somebody. And he becomes a part of the crowd, a part of just the society of the time in the big city, in the way that the system works, and people who are earning money, making money for the big companies, all that kind of thing. And he is a part of that, and there's a fantastic, sequence where we see the buildings of New York, and then it was obvious had to have been a model shot. It reminded me a bit of Blade Runner at times, but it was like a slow panning shot going up this big skyscraper, and then it stops and slowly goes into one of the windows, and then we go inside the workplace, and it's this huge set. It looks like hundreds of... The laptop just went off. It looks like there's hundreds of desks, people, workers working, and it zooms in on the one table where Johnny is working diligently away. It probably isn't hundreds, but it feels like it because of the scope. It's larger than life. It stretches reality in that sense. And that's something this film does really well. It has these great moments, these great shots that are larger than life, and they feel like they're like you go back to German expressionism, not quite that far, but it's kind of like a piece of that expressionism. It still feels very normal in most of the sense. And also what I liked about the film was that it didn't overuse these kinds of shots. It didn't milk let's make this film look amazing in every shot. There'd be like 10-15 minutes where it's just the characters in a normal environment talking or whatever and interacting. And the guy who plays Johnny Sims I thought was great. He was very good at playing kind of a chipper, kind of happy-go-lucky guy, but also portraying the frustration he had as life got more difficult for him, and as he became more just a tiny member of the crowd, and then maybe being pushed outside of the crowd, and how difficult life can be when you're not a part of that system that keeps on moving. And I feel like there are some comparisons that can be made from the way it portrays work life, in today's society, but there's still a big element of it, I think, that pertains to the time period. It's very much a kind of a snapshot of the 20s, I think, era, and that I liked. I liked seeing, that kind of, and also the way that romances were kind of dealt with back then, because in the film he marries pretty quickly. A girl called Mary, and she was very good in the film as well, I thought, the actress. But it's literally a case of, hey, you just went on a blind date, and he thought she was pretty cute, and they got on pretty well, and at the end of the night he's like, do you want to get married? And she was like, yeah, sure. And they get married, and it's a completely different way of thinking, but it's kind of nice to see it because it's different. and I'm not sure if it was accurate, if that happened in the 20s. I mean, I feel like it is, because I know that at least in the 50s, just, you know, one frame of reference I know is that very much it was a common that, you know, as soon as you were out of school, you'd go and get a job and then get a wife and then have kids, and it would just be very kind of just, this is what you do, everyone must do this, that kind of thing. And it's not really like that now. These days I feel like the norm is to, you know, is for people to leave school and kind of do what they want for a while and date and, you know, maybe settle down in their 30s. And so it's interesting seeing the different ways that goes on. The film itself, though, I thought was phenomenal. I am biased because I love the silent era and I love silent films. I'm not sure how accessible it would be to someone who hasn't seen a silent film before, but I do feel like it's one of the ones that would be easier to watch than some of the other ones I've seen, for sure. It's a very simple story. I felt like it maybe jumped about a little bit with kind of the tone in terms of how serious it was, and then kind of the jokey stuff as well. But I kind of just adored it. I really did. And again, I loved how it had these spectacular shots, and the way the camera moved was very, you know, kind of ahead of its time. I hate using that word because there are a lot of films in the 20s that were ahead of its time in terms of the camera movement, but this is one of them that really did it really well and was ahead of its time. It was nominated for at the first Academy Awards for the most artistic film, which Sunrise ended up winning. But I can see why this was in contention with it. I think Sunrise is better for sure, but this one is a real great film. Is it a film you must see before you die? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, but I'm saying yes at the risk of knowing that it's because I'm biased towards this film. But I genuinely think it's a great film, and was a lot of fun, and kind of you know, was kind of a little bit, it evoked some emotions, not as much as maybe Sunrise for sure, but it certainly had something extra. And again, I just love how it had these spectacular shots that kind of that were there for the story and kind of helped augment the story, I think, and they weren't just there to show off, and also they weren't used all the time, and so it was sparingly used, you know. And you could say, well, it's because they couldn't afford to do these huge sets for every single scene, but I liked how it was just this normality, and then a key point of the story, you'd have this big, larger-than-life thing. So yeah, that's about it really. I mean, what more can I say about The Crowd? I know that the French director Jean-Luc Godard said that in the 60s he was asked, why don't people make more films about ordinary people? And he's like, well, why remake The Crowd? It's already been done. Which is an interesting point. I don't know if I quite agree with it, because there's always more to be said about just ordinary people, I think. But it is a film that just deals with ordinary people. There's a fun side character, Johnny's friend Bert. I thought he was quite funny in the film. And it just felt believable. It felt believable, and also Johnny has to battle with the fact that Mary's family don't approve of him, and that's kind of a thing in the film. But I loved the ups and downs and the performances, and also just the element of seeing a character's life, you know, from birth and going through the years and stuff. It does jump ahead. You know, we see Johnny, the adult actor, playing him in his early 20s, but the years go on, and we see his relationship with Mary go on and stuff like that. So I like films in general that show someone's life over a long period of time, and so that was cool as well. And it was one of the first 25 films to be entered into the United States National Film Registry, I think, where they preserve films that are deemed to be important. In 1989 they started doing that, and this is one of the first 25 films to go in, which says a lot, I think. I don't think it's one of the best films of the silent era, but I do think it's one of the great ones. It's certainly up there. It's certainly within punching distance, and I would definitely recommend it if you're into silent films. If you're not, you know, I'd still say give it a chance, but I do feel like, I mean, it's like an hour and 45 minutes, and you know, not everyone has the attention span for it, but I guess, you know, it didn't feel like it dragged. You know, some silent films I can enjoy because I'm a fan of the silent era, and I dig it, and so I can watch like a 3-hour silent film, because I'm just drinking it all in and just admiring sort of the way the camera is or whatever, or just looking at the performances. I don't know what, just something about me that gets drawn to these silent films. But I can watch one that drags and acknowledge that it drags, but I can still enjoy it. This one doesn't really drag, you know. It keeps moving at a good pace, I feel. And yeah, there's a really funny bit where when Johnny goes on the first date with Mary. It's like a double blind date with his friend Bert. they go to this carnival and they go inside this tunnel of love. As they're there, they're about to kiss and stuff, and then as they're about to kiss inside the tunnel opens and there's loads of people watching, and there's like a sign above it that says, "Watch them neck." Will they do it? Like, watch them neck. I just found that concept hilarious, that they'd have people spectating on if people are going to be snogging inside the tunnel of love. It just really tickled me for some reason. And there's a great kind of double moment, you know, where you see something near the beginning of the film and it's commented on, or you see it and it's kind of like it's shown in one sense, and then at the end of the film it comes back and you see the other side of it, and it's to do with the guy in the street. When Johnny and Mary are looking down at this guy on the street from this open top bus, and then at the end of the film you see something that ties back into it. If you've seen the film, you know what I mean. I won't spoil it, but I thought that was really well done and a nice touch. So yeah, The Crowd gets top marks from me. I really, really enjoyed it, and it probably is a film you should see before you die.